3.3 major project. This is the second introduction video for Project 5. I have continued to work on the large scale samples that I left you with in my videos in Project 4, and I continued with going more large scale with the materials that I'd got at hand. Because of the experience of the grey chainmail piece, I wanted to make this piece with the foam discs replicate chainmail or armour. Wanted to continue to see how this would perform in size and the weight, and how the materials would perform if the body was used in performance. And it's worked rather well. I've divided and used and added more colour, so the piece now is quite large scale, as we can see. It has a front and a back, and also as well has now become reversible with block colour. As we can see that the piece is large scale, and while I was working on this, it kind of starts to replicate a Sentry mat of some description. I think it's interesting that it can be laid out on the floor. It can be reversible, so if you wish to bring the discs to the surface, you can. Or you can just play with the smoother block colour surfaces, and then obviously around the edges the foam discs appear. Definitely replicates colour and tactility. So this, like the other piece, is kind of working as an object or a sample that's working both ways, for performance and for a piece of either abstract art or something that would work on the floor for the audience to participate and get involved. And as you can see, I'm working the object all the time. It is quite heavy. As part of the construction, I still continued with the idea of the holes. It does make the construction slightly easier, but also as well, I find that it can either be used to pop a fist or a hand through. It can be worn by pulling over the head, and the arms or the hands can be inserted, but also as well, it has now started to change the construction of the object. So not only does the body encourage the piece to perform, but the piece performs of its own accord. Only the body, wherever the head or the feet or the hands are inserted, will actually start to manipulate the piece. And also as well, we can change the shape. Some of the panels are slightly asymmetric. It's not a piece that's symmetrical, but that is due to the construction. One thing that you will find then when working with your materials, especially different types of yarn, you do get variations with tension. With the particular machine that I'm using, it has a plate that's inserted, and that plate is appropriate for the yarn that you're actually working with. So I wouldn't say that it was a discrepancy, but I do think it just makes the item a little bit more interesting. But overall, now that I've actually got the garment or the abstract piece on, it does feel relatively heavy. You kind of have to manipulate and push the weight because of the contrasting materials, but this does perform, and I think it would perform particularly well in an open space with the body. I think a form of dance would be really good, or just a piece that you could wear if you were particularly having a bad day and just wanted to relieve some frustration of some description. But also as well, when I've not been looking at the piece has actually just been hanging up and attached to the wall, and it actually makes a piece of very attractive art. So I'm kind of looking at all the ideas of and concepts of my textile making, that I could possibly be turning these into pieces of fashion, and then if that was the direction that it was going to take, it would be fashion becoming a form of art. But also as well, I think this has further development for something that, because of the wearability of my materials, that's something that could be possibly quite commercial. For example, it could be a bag, or it could be some form of weighted blanket, a weighted poncho. It definitely feels attached to the body. I think because of the simple construction, it forms to the three-dimensional shape of the body, because the body isn't symmetrical, or we can not make it symmetrical through movement and so forth. So I do think this piece works rather well. I think this is going to perform very well in a video once I find my actor or actress, or if not, I will play that role. I think this is going to be particularly good to demonstrate the idea of sound, or I think it needs some form of abstract sound making, so that this will complement the movement of this piece. It's interesting how it does work, and also as well, I think I've kind of taken on board the idea of colour. I think it's been difficult to form a colour palette because the materials have actually dictated this. These are actually foam fishing floats, which in turn I've made wearable to my knitted fabric, but I just think it just works. I wouldn't say the colour palette is my particular favourite, but there is something about this as a piece that we can see that it resonates with the research that I've been bringing through from the playground. I think it also resonates with the ideas of, you know, the online dyslexia store, where fidgets and objects to comfort and relieve tension work through. So I think my research naturally starts to form as I am beginning to think more forward, and it kind of just naturally happens and falls into place as I'm working, because the theme of dyslexia has become such a proportion of the work and the ideas, and it starts to answer the initial questions that I originally came up with and asked, what is play? Well, here we go. This is an example and answers that question. What is play and creativity?